Hey everyone, hello and welcome to another Inkarnate live stream. My name is Mati, and today I'm going to be helping you all to understand groups. That is, what are they, how do they work, use cases, the works. So that way you kind of understand how to work them, because they're actually really important to your overall mapping experience and to the process. It's really going to be helpful to you. So we'll go ahead and break all that down in today's stream. Now, of course, if you want to follow along, you're probably going to want to clone and edit this map. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. It's a link. So if you go ahead and just click that, clone and edit the map, and then you'll be able to follow along in the stream. Hello and welcome everybody. All right, I'm going to let people kind of filter in. Slowly let people kind of filter in, and then we'll get started. I just only have one real quick announcement, and that is that we're going to be releasing some new stuff for the fantasy world style coming up soon. I don't have an exact date, so don't ask, but it's very soon. And we kind of have a stream coming up next week where we'll be making fantasy world biomes. So that will be super fun. I'm excited about that. Hello, Teldern. Welcome. Hey, sweet. All right. Different hours, starting at a different time. I hope this is going to be helpful for some people. We'll see how it goes. So we're breaking down groups. Okay. So let's go ahead and first just kind of get this started on how it works. Oh, that's right. I got a lot of people's business cards at Gen Con, and it was awesome. And I'll make sure to check over all those again soon. All right, so we're understanding groups. All right, now first, the question you have is like, what are groups? What are they exactly? And a group is just a series of objects in Inkarnate that are editable and can be nested together to create a group. All right, so now what items can be nested into a group? Well, you're going to have your basically stamps. You're going to have text, which I have there, and of course paths. So these items right here can all be put together into a group. Now if I select these three objects right here and I select the group button, it's up here at the top, or you can do it in the hamburger menu with group, and look, there's even a little shortcut key there. If all are selected and you press the G key, it will be grouped. And you'll notice on the right panel here, it says group and the number 3. That number just means how many objects are inside of that group. So there are only 3, that path, that tree, and that text. So that is what it does when you group them. Now, as a whole group, you'll be able to rotate them as a whole. You'll be able to resize them as a whole and even change the opacity. And that can be extremely useful when you're trying to maybe compose something and you want to be able to control all of it at once instead of independently from each other. Now to do that, if you want to control things independently or things within the group, you just double click the group and it will open up. Now when you open up a group, it's going to automatically select everything in the group. That's just the behavior of the tool. All right, so there's that text, there's the path, and then there's that summer tree. Okay, so just remember, if you want to edit a group, just make sure to double click it. There should also be an edit group button. Let me go back. So if I select a group, you'll notice that there are 2 options. There's an ungroup, which just ungroups them. And then there's also the edit group button, which will open it up. But you can also double click. So just remember group and the number. And what I always do whenever I make a group is I try to label it right away. The way that you label or to rename it is just go to that pencil and it'll say rename when you hover over it. And you can just rename it to whatever you want. Title, fuzzy, what, I don't care. Whatever it is you want. So whatever that title, the number is, or the title of it is you want it to be, label it. And then you'll know what it is. Because what you'll end up doing is more and more you discover how useful groups are in your map building process, the more often you'll find yourself using groups. And when you end up having a lot of groups, you're probably going to want to rename them. So that way you don't have to select each one in that right panel trying to figure out which group is which. So always doing a little bit of renaming is extremely helpful. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete this group. Now let's talk about what exactly you're going to be using groups for. Now, in this particular map, what I've used it for is a bunch of things. I've grouped a lot of stuff. So I've grouped something called everything. And inside of here is just my entire background and things like that. And the reason why I like to do this, select everything, is that way I can also label it. I know what it is. Then I can also lock it so they don't accidentally select anything. So with the lock on, if I go and drag my mouse across the screen, you'll notice that I can't select anything. Well, that's extremely helpful when I'm trying to compose something on the map and not accidentally select the stuff that's already there. So grouping everything can be really helpful to keep you from accidentally selecting a bunch of stuff. Use cases like that are, let's say that you have a forest and you have a label on the forest, but you can't select the text because the trees are all kind of, their selection boxes are in the way. And so you can't select that text. So a really helpful trick is to group everything, maybe just group all those trees, and that way you can select that text more easily. You can just lock all that forest that you've created into a group, and then you can select the text. So that's very helpful to always try to group a lot of things, always be aware of the layering. And you'll find that groups are extremely helpful because you're going to end up stacking, layering things more and more and more, and that will help you out. So let's go over a couple of groups that I have already on the map that are actually, that will break down so I can kind of explain a little bit more. So most of the time when you're working on a battle map like this and you have some open space, you might want to add some things that makes it a little bit more dynamic. You're seeing this battle map and there's a lot of open space where that tile is. So maybe I want to create a puzzle, or I want to create something in the center of the map that the players can interact with, or maybe jump on top of to do a lunge attack for more damage, anything like that, right? So adding in something dynamic. So what I've done is I've created something with a group, and it's called this forest altar. And let's just say that maybe this altar is used to affect that face in the background. So I'm going to bring the opacity up, and you'll notice in the center of the canvas here, I've got this forest temple, or this forest kind of altar right here, and it's something that you might end up interacting with. Your players are going to interact with. It's going to affect that face at the top. Now, like I said, what's nice with those groups is that I can rotate them in any direction I want. So if I don't want that altar in the center of the map, I can just rotate it and move it over to here if I want. I can move it over to here. I can move it over to here. So that's really nice about groups, because sometimes you won't be satisfied with the specifically where something is. And so grouping it allows you to move it as a whole against having to select everything over and over again and then having to move it. So grouping is very helpful for that kind of thing. So we have this kind of table right here. I'm going to open it up so you can kind of see what's inside of it. So inside you can see all the various pieces that I've used to make this thing. And all I did was just select all of it, and then I hit the G key, it grouped it, and of course I labeled it Forest Altar so that I have it available to me. I'm going to observe what's in the group. You'll see that there's kind of a blue orb right here. Let's just say that maybe by getting this orb and then climbing up, you put that orb inside this eye socket that's on the left. There, right. Okay? And so let's say that you put that orb inside of there and it has an effect on something. So you've put the orb inside and it opens up the eye, and then it maybe causes something else to happen, right? So I'm going to open up this group so you can see what's inside of it. All I used was just a spell and Hell Eyes. Groups are going to get complex. So eventually you'll have groups within groups. They may not be as simple as just a spell and Hell Eyes, but hey, it can be useful to group even two objects if it means not having to move it around constantly and selecting the two independently. So it's always nice to group. No matter how small the group is, it's still incredibly useful. So now maybe after you've opened up the eye, you have to do something else with your players, and it opens up maybe something up to a dungeon. So if you check the mouth here, the mouth opens after inserting the orb into the eye, and you see some stairs going down into the mouth. I'm going to open up this group, and you'll notice that there are multiple groups within this group. So what have I created? I've got a lower lip, which is a series of paths and stamps to kind of create the rest of the lip for the mouth here. If I go back, you'll notice there's also the lower lip, all the paths that are there for that. So you can use paths, stamps, text, and of course you can also use other groups and then group them together. Now what's really, really helpful about groups within groups is that you can create more and more layers. Let's say that you've constructed this face right here, and you've kind of discovered that you've run out of room between layer -5 and layer +5. You've somehow been able to stack so many stamps that you've limited the layer usage, but there's still more stamps that you want to layer on top, right? So what ends up happening is that once you've created a layer and you've put stuff within that layer, all of that stuff within that group is on one layer. So you can actually have quite a few layers stacked on top of each other by grouping things. So it's always important to remember that if you're running out of layers, you can go ahead and take all those objects, nest them together, make it into a layer, and then start working on top of that, and then group that, and then on top of that. So whenever you run out of room, always remember that groups are going to absolutely help you with creating more layers to work with, because sometimes 11 layers might not be enough. And although a lot of people have asked questions like, well, how is it that I can put in more than just 11 layers? Groups is the way to do it. So just remember that, super important, okay? Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Cheryl. And you know, that's about as simple as groups go. And I will give you also some use cases as well, because that's really important to know, like what exactly are you going to be using them for? And I'll go with the most simplest and the easiest use cases that I know of. And of course, the more that you use groups, the more that you nest these objects together, the more and more complex eventually you're going to start going. So what we'll do is we'll just stick with something simple at first. I'm going to go ahead and hide this group real quick, make it completely invisible. So the most basic use cases for me that I've used when trying to use groups is really going to be banner and text, which is pretty simple. If you have a location on the map, you go ahead and put down your banner, right? And of course you throw on some text right on top of that. So we'll go ahead and put together some text, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it right on top of here. It should be on the right layer as well. Put some text there. And then of course you can go with more detail. Maybe you want to go to like fantasy world and you want to use a flat facing stamp on top of it to kind of represent that it's a capital or a village. You can totally do that. So you just select these two. There's group button at the top up here. There's also in the hamburger menu group, or just click the G key when the items are selected, and there you go. Now you have it. So this is the most simple use case that I can think of. There's also other ones a little bit more complex. Hey Brian, welcome. So glad that you are here. Also, I missed that first time chatter. Thank you, by the way, Brandon, for mentioning that. Love the question. Right, and so I'll show you some simple composites that we can use. For starters, the most simplest one that I know of is to create a bridge, because some of you might be wondering, well, how is it that I make a bridge? And I'll show you how I do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this texture right here, make sure that I'm on the right layer here. I'm on the wrong layer. Let's go to FG layer. I'm going to just make a river basically that just goes across the screen like this. We'll just cut it in half, make it go around like this. Let's say that you want to create a bridge that goes across this. All right, you're going to want to construct some kind of bridge, because I don't think we actually have one. Let me just open up that catalog real quick. And making a bridge is actually super duper easy. It's not complex. All it requires is just one wall stamp or wall tool. Well, I'm sorry, not wall tool. One wall stamp, at least a set, and you're going to be using that set. And you're just going to use the long pieces, make it as wide as you want it to. So normally this is about 5 square feet per grid space. And so if you want it to be obviously 10 feet across, then you would put these two side by side like this. It's always nice to put a little cap on the ends as well. Yes, I have wall tool brain because I am so excited for the wall tool. And of course, I would actually suggest you just make one, then copy and paste it and move it over, but oopsie. Once you've kind of made the overall size of the bridge, the last step is just to throw down a clipping mask. Open up that catalog, and I'm just going to throw in clip, and a clipping mask should show up. I'm going to go ahead and show it and choose the edge smooth square. It doesn't really matter which one you choose when it comes to whether it's a smooth or harder edge. I'm going to use the harder edge like this. I'm going to go ahead and size it up to where it fits, and then I'm also going to, well, actually, because it's not BG, I can just paint it in, but just in case your water was made with the, here, let's just do that actually. Silly me. Let me go over to this real quick, because normally you're probably going to use this, so let me try that real quick. Sorry about that, my bad. I'm going to go ahead and make a river that's going to be with the BG or the subtract mode of the mask tool. That way I can make it separate, because the clipping mask is more useful. Since everything's on the FG layer, I'm going to go ahead and use this. Oopsie, I forgot I had clipping masks right here. My bad. Okay, let's quickly go ahead and throw down a texture onto this BG layer so you can see it. There we go. And I'm making a bridge that goes across. This is why I'm using clipping mask, because normally your land is going to be FG and your water is going to be your BG layer. That's subtract mode of the mask tool. Then I can throw down that clipping mask. Okay, I throw down that clipping mask. And I'm going to go ahead and stretch it all the way down so it goes all the way across. Now I can go in and just throw some grass down and just put that on FG layer. And if you'll notice, I'll be able to paint on top of that without accidentally going onto the BG layer. So let's also throw in maybe this little texture right here, so that way it's kind of matching. There we go. And then you select all of these, just press that G key. Now it's grouped, of course, always label it right away, bridge. That way you have it. And now it's available, and I can go ahead and just rotate it and move it where I want it. Oopsie, I'm actually inside the group. I want to be outside of the group. There we go. All right, now I can rotate it. And of course, you'll have to retexture, because textures do not move. So you have to repaint. So wherever you put that bridge at, you're going to have to paint it, just so you know, okay? So you have a little thing going across like this. So it's always helpful to use a clipping mask. It's always incredibly useful to use a clipping mask, let me tell you. All right. Oh, awesome. Oh, man, I talked to so many people at Gen Con. Oh, so many awesome people. Someone told me about their master thesis, too, and that was just amazing. So this is what clipping masks are. I use clipping masks for a lot of things. You can use clipping masks to hide projected shadows from stamps. Clipping masks are extremely useful, and of course, you can group them. So extremely, extremely useful, right? And no, it's not a custom stamp. The Deep Voice Guide clipping masks are built right into the catalog. Just go ahead and click that. Awesome. Oh, I know some people already answered these questions. Sorry, Cheryl. So that pretty much breaks it down on how things operate. Don't forget that they can change the layer as well. So you can change the layer of a group at any time. Also notice that if you just want to select a group and nothing else, you can go to the select tool, press that V key, go over to select all, and what you're doing is you're turning off everything in your selection. Go to the not the very end, but second to the last, and you'll see something called groups. This will allow you to just select groups, okay? So that way, if you have a bunch of stamps and they're kind of in the way and you keep trying to select a group, then you can just do group only, select it, and that way it's so useful, because the busier the map's going to get, the more you're going to find that selecting things is difficult. That's what grouping is for, grouping and locking. It's extremely useful. So clipping masks are a must. Absolutely use them. Absolutely use them with groups, because there's so many different things that you can actually do with groups. It's kind of crazy. And let's see what the time is. It's only 3:20. We have a lot of time left. Why don't I go ahead and make something a little bit more complex? It's going to have several groups, and that way I can kind of show you how I put things together, all right? Go ahead and just put things back the way they were before. I'm just going to go ahead and remove this. In fact, I can probably just undo it in the history. I'll go over to history right here. Just give it a moment to load. Let's see, where am I? Oh, yeah, we can move all this stuff. I think we're going to remove that. Let's just go ahead and restore. That's great about history. You can go through and look for things. Hey, first time chatter, Dagon, welcome. Just use a clipping mask to hide a cliff piece jutting out. Wow, never used these before. Extremely helpful. Clipping masks are great, and I'm glad that people are being introduced to them. Okay, so we went ahead and removed that. Now I'm going to go ahead and make something in the center of this map to show you the process of how to put together composite stamps. Usually what I do is I select everything on the map and I lock it. So that way, when I'm putting together the composite, I don't accidentally bump into something. So always super helpful to kind of just lock everything, and that way you won't select anything. All right. Also, when you're working on something within a group, it's sequestered from everything else on the map. It's just editing within the group. So also, it's really useful to edit within a group, so that way you also won't select anything outside of the group. Working within a group is extremely helpful and allows you to not select anything except for what's in that group. So let's say that I want to put together a altar. How did I put that altar together? I'll show you. So I'm going to pick a main piece that I want to be the centerpiece. Everything else is going to be built around that piece. So consider this the base. I'm going to rotate it to where I want it to be. And I'm also using the grid as a guide. So this is about 15 feet across. So the grid is extremely helpful. So this is going to be that base piece. This is that piece that everything else is going to be built upon. The next step is I want to make it a kind of like an earth altar, right? So you're thinking of an earthy like theme. So what I'll end up doing is maybe some roots coming out of it. You see how this one's kind of broken? That's kind of nice. So why don't we throw in a root that's kind of jutting out like this? So that root was coming out like that. So that's useful. And right away, I have two objects now available to me. So that root and here. And I'm also going to maybe decorate some more stuff on it. So what I do is I might go through that catalog and look for other things that I might want to put on it. One thing we could do is possibly put a arch like this right on top. And maybe we want to add some vines, because you would expect something like a forest or an earth-like temple to be maybe kind of taken over by nature, shall we say. And so throwing in vines is a great way to kind of make it look like it's got overgrown vegetation. Just remember that you first start with the larger base piece first, and you'll put stuff on top of that. So it's always useful to first put down that base piece. That way it has the most space. It's taken up the majority of your composition, and then you can just start putting pieces on top of that. Now I might want to consider adding some other things, like maybe a broken stair might work well. Look, we've got this root right here, and maybe it popped out. It broke a little bit of that main piece right there. So maybe it's a good idea to throw in a staircase that's kind of been broken as well. I'm going to use that grid as a guide. Most of these stairs are set for 5 by 5 square feet. So I'll go ahead and throw in this stair right here. And you can see that the root is kind of underneath of it. I'm also going to, play with all the different shadows later. So now I have this main piece right here. And what I'm going to do next is maybe put some roots underneath of it. So we'll go down several layers. And the way that I project height and depth is through contrast, so light and dark. And so what I'll do is I'll set all of these to layer, and I'm also going to drop the brightness down. So the way that I do height is that the darker something is, the farther down it is. The brighter something is, the higher up it is. So using contrast is really, really useful to help you understand what's kind of closer to your freaking face and what's not. So I'll go ahead and put this one right here underneath. I'm going to put another one maybe protruding over here like this, and maybe a big one in the back of it underneath right here like this. Oopsie, I'm going to put that up a layer, I think. There we go. And so you can see right here, the roots are kind of popping out. They're a little bit darker. Notice how they're darker than the root, this root right here that's higher up, right? So I've used that depth, used that contrast trick to give the illusion of depth. That's absolutely useful, okay? All right, so now you have that. Now I also want to throw in maybe that orb that we showed earlier. I'm just going to put it right here. That's the eye, that's that piece that goes to this eye right here. When you put it into that eye socket, it activates the eye, and you can see that there is a spell activated, and it causes the mouth to drop down for your players to go into whatever dungeon lays ahead or beneath all of this stuff. Ooh, spooky. So now we're going to go over to spells as well. I do want to show that the orb is something important, so putting a little spell around it kind of signifies that this is something important that your characters are going to want to snag and use later on in the map. Maybe there's some combat going on. Maybe they can't get to the orb because there's some creatures floating around, or maybe moving or protecting the altar. So you slay the beasties, jump off on and off the altar, so that way you have some dynamic thing to work with. Also, you can also throw on some other things. I think what might be nice here is also a giant log that's on top like this, so that maybe if that's blocked off, the stairwell is blocked off, you'll be able to go onto this giant log, run up, do your battles with whatever is protecting that. So it kind of gives something your players to kind of work with. Okay, and we've added that as well. Now, once I've done everything, I can go in, select everything, press that G key, and of course I'll bring it up a layer because there is a clipping mask underneath. I've used that clipping masks to hide some of this face, and so those clipping masks are there, and so I tried to use clipping masks to kind of hide the face. So now once you have that, there it is, right, moving around independently. You'll notice that the shadows go away. That's just doesn't cause lag. Once you put deselect it or stop dragging or clicking or holding onto it, the shadows will come back. So now you have that group there, and of course you can rotate it wherever you want it to be. So if you want that log to line up with the grid, so that way it's so easy for players to just walk onto the grid, it doesn't look awkward. So you can move those groups where you want them to make it easier to interact with your grid. Lots of different options. I'm just going to put mine in the center because I think it just looks nice. But you can place whatever it is you've made into a group anywhere you kind of want. I'm going to place mine a little bit more central. I think over here might be a little bit better. That's a little bit more central. There we go. So let me just quickly review that process again. Whenever you're making a composite stamp that you're going to make into a group, you're going to start with the largest piece first. That's that broken crypt you've got there. Once I did that, I started building things on top of it. I added vines to give it kind of this vegetative feel that it's overgrown with vegetation. I used an arch as a backdrop in the back of the altar. I threw in a staircase. We had protruding roots at the bottom, and of course that log that goes all the way down, and that allows your players to maybe try to get to the altar, right? So those are all what you really need to know about groups. I think I've mentioned everything that's important about it. Let's see what time it is. It's still super early. I don't really need to explain any bit more. I think that pretty much sums it all up. Feel free, we can go ahead and just ask some questions that people have, and I can go over those in the next 10 minutes. And if you really, really like this map, if you go to my profile, oh yeah, let's add a filter real quick, just to show you that last touch. My bad. Let me add that final touch. There's that filter to kind of give that ambiance. And that's that last step. I don't try not to work with filters on because that causes serious lag. So I always just have filters turned off. But yeah, the last step for me is throwing on that filters. And so that way everything kind of fits well together. Do you have any news on the room creation tool that we got teased? No, I don't have a date at this time. We are working on it. We're doing a lot of testing. So we're trying to, of course, good things takes time. We don't want to slap together this room tool and then kind of give it to you kind of incomplete. So give us time to test and to do everything out. But believe me, it's in the works. We're working on it. I don't want to give any dates because we don't have any. So that answers that question. Feel free to answer any other questions. Ask any other questions. Yeah, I'll wait. Ask away. Always glad to help. If you have any questions about the map, please, any support questions about your account and stuff like that, leave that for our internal support. So please don't ask that here. But any questions you have about this map or anything about composites or things about the tool you might have, I can answer those for you, okay? Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about the room tool. The room tool is going to be a lifesaver for just about everything, creating rooms, maybe a city, whatever. So the room tool is going to be absolute magic. So I'm super excited about that. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I'll give you guys a few moments to ask questions. If not, then we can kind of go over the schedule for this month. We'll go over that schedule. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just save these changes. Normally, I like to save after about 100 changes. For anyone who's new here or not familiar with the tool, it's always good to save after 100 changes or so. Remember, it is a browser or web-based tool, so you're going to want to save and refresh often. So, and don't forget to clear your cache as well. No questions so far. So let's go over the calendar after this is saved. How would you, let's over land and partial water. I don't normally use a clipping mask over land and over partial water. If you have like an example, feel free to ping me in our Discord server. Speaking of Discord, if you haven't joined our Discord, you absolutely should, because I can answer questions like that here. What I need is an example. So if you give me an example in Discord, just ping me or the mentors, and I will go ahead and we can go over that, because I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean on only partial of it, because the only way that would happen is if you have it on one layer. Let's say that you have your water is on the BG and your land is also on the same layer. Are there any plans for making a standalone app version for Inkarnate? That would be great. You know, that's heavily requested. I like the idea. We might have something in mind. So, yeah, I know a lot of people would prefer a non-web-based tool, but there are certain perks that come with a web-based tool over a downloadable app. I can give you those examples. Basically, if you're doing just a downloadable or an executable only, it's more work for the team. We have to come up with various versions every time we update or add new art that has to be recoded. So one of the benefits of a browser-based tool is that every time we upload art, it's really simple and easy. We don't have to add any more coding or anything like that. But I do understand that one time wanting to get that app instead, because not everyone has access or direct access to the internet all the time. So I do understand that. The other perks is that when we don't have like a one-time purchase, for instance, with a downloadable or an executable, is that we're allowing a continuous stream of money to come in, so we can continue to expand the team and kind of do more quality QOL, quality of life, and things like that. So there's a reason why we're using web-based tool for now. But I'm glad that you suggested that. If you go to Discord, we have a feature request channel, and I know for a fact that has been requested, so definitely go ahead and give that request a thumbs up, because I know it's popular. Any more cliff art? I don't know. That's a great question. Not that I know of. So, but hey, don't worry. We always try to keep you guys updated the best that we can. So we've just told you that we're going to be releasing some new fantasy world art. So I'm super excited about that. And next week, we're going to be doing a stream basically on that. So super exciting. All right, another question here. I'll let Cheryl answer that question. All right. Oh yeah, I would love some Underdark terrain. All right. So I think that is it. I'm just trying to keep this stream short. I hope that we kind of broke down what groups are, how to use them, what's the most important, how to compose a group, starting with that larger piece first. Takes up a lot of space, and you can just build up on top of that. And of course, I introduced you to clipping masks, and it seems like a lot of you are very excited about clipping masks. And maybe it'd be a great idea to maybe even come up with a stream with maybe something like 20 use cases for clipping masks or 30 use cases for clipping masks. I think that might be a useful stream. So also, if you go to Discord, we have a stream request channel. You should definitely check that out. There's a lot of stream requests, but feel free to add some. And don't forget to scroll through the stream requests. Maybe what you're looking for is already there. So definitely go check that out. I think that's going to be it for the stream. Thank you everyone for watching. We kept this one short, but it's been a great stream. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any other questions about groups, feel free to go ahead and ask me in Discord. Just ping me or ping mentors, and we can answer any questions that you might have. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Next week is going to be how to create fantasy world terrain. So go check that out. I'm super excited about that. Everyone wants to know how to make biomes and all the different terrain. Please stay safe and healthy, everybody. Merry map making, and I will see you all next week. Auf Wiedersehen.